Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Yesterday I uploaded just a simple tag video, just doing what we usually do on Tuesdays, answering questions, talking about books. But for some reason, that video caught a lot of attention. A lot of people jumped into the comments, left nice comments, some questions and things like that. It was very cool seeing the response that it got. It reinforces to me something that YouTubers and anybody who makes YouTube videos consistently talks about, which is that you never know. You never know what's going to hit people a certain way and what isn't. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It's great. Sometimes you think that a certain video is going to catch a lot of attention and it doesn't. And then other times you'll just like upload in a half-drunken stupor, practically, some small thing, and then everybody jumps in and engages with it. So it's very cool. It's a very unique experience. Part of what makes making YouTube videos such an exciting thing, and why I've found that I really like doing it. But anyway, yesterday I was talking about nonfiction, and I was talking about how I really liked nonfiction. I said some maybe controversial things about how I maybe like nonfiction more than I like fiction. But a couple of people in the comments of that video asked me to kind of do a follow-up on it and talk about some nonfiction recommendations. Now, I was initially not going to do this for two reasons. One is that I'm a pretty new reader myself, so I kind of hesitate giving out recommendations because I don't have a bird's eye view of any particular type of book, nonfiction, fiction, some sort of subgenre or subcategory of either. I'm not an expert on anything, so I have a hard time giving out recommendations just based on that. But also because obviously nonfiction is incredibly broad. So many things, an infinite number of things fall into the category of nonfiction. So just saying nonfiction recommendations, I would much rather give people specific recommendations based on their own interests and their own things that they like to read, rather than just throwing blanket suggestions out there blindly. But I thought, well, I can put my own sort of constraints on my suggestions and give my own suggestions based on my own personal reading experiences. So that's what I did. I went through and I got some books off my shelf that represent some of my favorite experiences with nonfiction, but with a couple of constraints. One, they're all relatively new in terms of publication. I think the oldest on the list came out in 1993. So none of these books are, Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. None of these books are like Herodotus or anything like that. These are more contemporary pieces of nonfiction. Two, none of these are collections of essays. So I've got tons of collections of essays. I love essay collections, but all of these are just like singular works of nonfiction on, one subject. And then three, I excluded things like memoirs and autobiographies, collections of letters, things like that, even though I've had a fantastic time reading some of those as well. These are just contemporary pieces of nonfiction that I really enjoyed reading, and that's pretty much it. So if you're a fiction reader and you like reading primarily fiction, I don't blame you. I understand. But maybe you can put some of these suggestions in your back pocket for a rainy day when, Brandon Sanderson hasn't, published a new book in the last 15 minutes or something like that. But anyway, let's get started. I wanted to start with an honorable mention. It's an honorable mention because I already talked about it quite extensively on this channel already, but it's Michelangelo, God's Architect by William E. Wallace. And I talked about this book in my video on the Agony and the Ecstasy recently. And I talked about how great this was. I really enjoyed it. And I wanted to throw it in here just because it's short, it's accessible, it's very readable, it's very learned. William E. Wallace wrote a biography of a full-length biography of Michelangelo, so he knows what he's talking about. But this is just a book on Michelangelo's final years, and it's moving. It's very engaging and readable, and I had a fantastic time with it. So if you want to know more about this book, I talked about it in my Agony and the Ecstasy reading vlog. That book, that video was called, my biggest disappointment of the year, but that was in reference to the Agony and the Ecstasy. It was not in reference to this. So great book, had a great time reading it, and I wanted to include it just because of those aforementioned reasons. So that's just an honorable mention. And this list is composed of 6 books, just because for some reason I've been going with 6 as a theme on this channel. I had 6 biography recommendations, and a couple of other things have been. I just didn't want to break the tradition, I guess. So, and they're in no particular order. I guess they're in order of size. We'll pretend like they're in order of size. The first recommendation I have is actually a piece of nonfic. I'm sorry, a piece of journalism, and it's Lenin's Tomb by David Remnick. And this is David Remnick's sort of chronicling of the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, and it's fascinating. It's gripping and it's moving, and David Remnick just paints so many interesting portraits of the people who are alive at the time, contemporary, either big movers and shakers in the Soviet Union at the time, Gorbachev, Yeltsin, people like that, but also locals, individual people, a lot of moving portraits of just the everyday person that David Remnick is meeting and talking to at the time, the people who are left over in the outskirts, the villages that have been abandoned and whatnot. It's, oh my gosh, there's some... He includes a portrait of Bukharin, Nikolai Bukharin, who was a friend of Stalin back in the day, and oh my God, is it moving? It is so moving. It's incredible, and there's there are 3. I've read 3 different accounts of the sort of coup attempt against Gorbachev. The first was in this book. The second one was in a book called Collapse, which I don't have. So here's a picture of it. It's great. It's a great cover. It was put out by Yale recently. And then the other one was in that Gorbachev biography by William Taubman. Here's a picture of that one, although that one is super dry. Neither one of those books gets close to the sort of urgency of this book in terms of describing just how harrowing that moment was when Gorbachev was almost basically locked in his dacha, and his wife has a nervous breakdown, and it's amazing. So this book I definitely give a recommend, even though it's a piece of journalism from 1991, and I'm sure not a ton of people are interested in it, but it does have the sensibilities of a novel in a way, because it is gripping and moving, and there are so many interesting characters in it, and I just loved it. I loved it. So anyway, I love it. I think it's great. Then we've got, speaking of loving something, this is The Age of Wonder by Richard Holmes. Oh my gosh, this book is fantastic. I actually talked about this on this channel before as well, but only briefly. I mentioned when I talked about it before that I had read it. I had read it and really liked it, but then I put it down and never forgot it. I never moved on from this book. It's always been in the back of my mind since I read it, and I was not expecting that. I thought it was good when I first read it, but I didn't know how good it was, and it's just never left me. Richard Holmes is basically writing this book, and it feels almost like a love letter to what he's studied and written about his whole career. He started out by writing in his 20s, his early 20s. I don't know when, but he was so young when he wrote it. He wrote a book called Shelley the Pursuit, which is this big biography of Shelley, and there's a New York Review of Books version of it that you can buy now. But it's fascinating because ever since then he's been one of the foremost voices on the Romantics. He wrote a big 2-volume biography of Coleridge, and then he wrote a book about writing that book, and he's just a fascinating guy, and one of the best people to write this book, maybe the best person to write this book. Just a love letter to that time. It's an age of discovery. It's an age of evolution in science and medicine. It's an age of innovation, and it is an age of wonder. It's an age of exploration. He talks about Cook, the explorations of James Cook, and Banks as well. And oh my gosh, Carolyn Herschel. Holy smokes, Carolyn Herschel. is amazing. Oh my gosh, the descriptions of her and what she did are just wonderful. Absolutely, just such a moving account. Joseph Banks, I don't know if I mentioned him already. Humphrey Davies, I want a movie about Humphrey Davies after reading this book. One of those people who lived long enough to see himself become a villain, really. I mean, wow. So yeah, I mean, full-throated recommendation to really anyone to read this book. I think this is one of the best books to sort of demonstrate what a more contemporary piece of nonfiction can be. It can be really gripping and really moving, and it can teach you a lot, but in a way that is engaging the entire time. So, huge recommendation for this one. Next is Alex Ross's Wagnerism, Art and Politics in the Shadow of Music. That subtitle is pretty awesome. I love that subtitle. But this is one of those books where it's so good that you want a book like this, but for different things and different people. Like, this book charts the influence of Wagner. Basically, how one artist influences other artists. And it got me thinking as I was reading it. I was like, gosh, like, I'd love a book about Kafka, that does this. I would love a book about Chaucer that does this. I mean, just a book. It is such a fascinating way of talking about how one artist influences a whole host of other artists, but also things that you would never expect. Obviously, there's a reference to politics here. He talks about how Wagner influenced city planners and architecture and movies, and it is fascinating. And I did not read this book because I knew anything about Wagner, really. So you don't have to know anything about Wagner to take to appreciate this book. I would say that if it sounds interesting, you should read it, but if it doesn't, you shouldn't force yourself to, because I don't necessarily think that this book is going to convince you of that. I mean, I think it's great, but I just thought it was interesting from the jump, and I didn't even know anything about Wagner. I just knew of Wagnerism, which is what this book is about. That's why it's called Wagnerism. What does it mean when you say Wagnerism? How did Wagner's music influence the world? The book opens with like 2 chapters or something kind of small, a small brief biography of Wagner, and then the rest of the book, and it's not a short book, the rest of the book, it's about 600, 700 pages. The rest of the book is just charting Wagner's influence, and it's way more fascinating than you'd think it would be. I loved it. So anyway, I give this one a recommend too. And then the next one is Fatal Discord by Michael Massing, another journalist. We've got 3 journalists on this list, actually. That's funny. Yeah, but Michael Massing is a journalist, and he is talking here about the Reformation, and he opens the book by saying that he's going to approach talking about the Reformation from a journalist method. He's going to use journalistic methods to talk about it. It is very interesting, and it functions as a biography, a dual biography of Luther and Erasmus. And if you don't really know much about Luther or Erasmus, then I would highly recommend this book. My only problem with this book was that it wasn't the first thing on the Reformation that I read. I had read a fair bit about the Reformation before I read this book, and I was actually a little bit upset that I hadn't started with this one. So I want to give this as a recommendation to, if you don't know anything about the Reformation, start here. This is a great place to start, because what it really does is it frames Luther and Erasmus as, a study of 2 temperaments. That was the subtitle of a book that I just read, which was amazing. But I haven't made a video. I'm dragging my feet on making a video about it because I don't want to mess it up. But yeah, this book is also a study of 2 temperaments. The Erasmian humanist temperament, and then the violent reactionary temperament of Luther. And I've got opinions about that, but we don't need to get into those. This book is a fascinating portrait of those 2 people, their relationship with each other. They wrote a series of letters back and forth, and they really are 2 of the most prominent voices in the Reformation, even though Erasmus deliberately tried to stay away from the reactionary politics of Luther. He even in doing so resembles or stands for a particular person who reacts in a particular way to any type of political instability and whatnot, and that makes this book timeless, because the discussions of Erasmus and Luther at the time of the Reformation are of a political nature that is very much relevant today, tomorrow, forever. But I don't need to get soupy and syrupy. I mean, I'm just recommending books that I like. This is a book I like, okay? It's good. And so anyway, then we've got The House of Government by Yuri Slezkin. And this is the most unique book on this list. It's big. I had a hard time putting it on this list because I thought, well, people are just not going to read like a 900-page book about the Soviet Union, especially because this book is not easy to read. But oh my gosh, it's so good. As I was thinking that, I picked it up and I started reading some of it again, and I just like got it. There's an electricity that comes off of this book. It's amazing. Like, it really is something that you have to experience. If it at all sounds interesting, you just have to experience it. He takes a novelistic approach to the Soviet Union, to the story that he's telling here. He even opens it up with a joke. He says, what's his joke? He says, "This is a work of history. Any resemblance to fictional characters, dead or alive, is entirely coincidental." But he takes a novelistic approach to his discussion of the House of Government of the Soviet Union. And he even says, hang on, let me see if I can just quickly find this. Yes, he goes, "This book consists of 3 strains. The first is a family saga involving numerous named and unnamed residents of the House of Government. The second strain is analytical. The third strain is literary." An emphasis on that literary aspect. There's such a literary aspect to this book that is just fascinating. And when I talk about people painting portraits, there's some unforgettable portraits in this book. And it really fits in with like other Russian epics. Like the Russian novel is known for being big and dramatic, and War and Peace, Anna Karenina, Brothers Karamazov, that type of thing. And this book is like the nonfiction, like Princeton University Press equivalent of that. It's fascinating. Like, it really would be like every dissertation advisor's nightmare, because if you're writing a dissertation, like, your advisor is going to tell you to be specific, and so you're supposed to go in there talking about like one line of one poem, and then you walk in, and I don't need to start talking about my experiences and whatnot, but it's like you walk in and you're talking about the ekphrasis of infinity, but this is that, but it's successful. He literally throws in everything but the kitchen sink. And what's funny is I read a review of this book a while ago where the reviewer was commenting about how when you're done with this book, you're deposited in kind of an upside down world. Like, you're deposited in a very weird place, especially if you've read about the Soviet Union before. It's like an upside down world where like left is right and right is left. It's very strange, and it doesn't really objectively true in some sense. Like, that was something that somebody commented on my last video, where they were like talking about how, like, yeah, it's good that you read nonfiction, but be wary of like treating everything that you read in nonfiction as fact. And like, this is a good example of like how you can't do that, because you can't read a book like this and treat it like it's a textbook, like 100%. Everything in this book is 100% accurate, but it's a compact, compelling case and viewpoint. And Yuri Slezkin gets caught up, I think, in his own momentum in this book. And that means that he ends up in a place that's kind of like weird and different and maybe not 100% accurate, but it's not supposed to be. Like, this is one book of millions of books on the Soviet Union. It's way more important that your thesis and what you're saying be interesting. It's way more important that what you're saying be engaging, and it doesn't have to be dry and 100% accurate for it to be worth reading. This book is not a textbook. It's not It's not meant to be read in such a way that you're like taking active notes so that you can pass a test or ace a quiz or whatnot. This is a book to read if you love this subject and you want to see somebody treat it in a unique and special way. I'm monologuing now, but this book is brilliant. It's brilliant, and so that gets a recommend from me. And then the last book I don't have, and I don't have because I will never have a copy of it, because anytime I get a copy of it, I'll give it away. Because I think if there was one book that if I could pay to have 7 billion copies of it printed and then give away those 7 billion copies, I would do it. It's Carl Sagan's The Demon Haunted World. Here's the cover. It's a very bad cover. I don't know why the cover is that bad, but the book is, like I said, if I could give a copy of this book to everybody in the world, I think I would. And I will always give away my copy of it. I had a copy, gave it away. I'll get another copy, give it away. I don't care. I think this book is incredible, and I think that it is one of the most prescient things that I've ever read in terms of talking about, well, how do I stop myself from going on a tangent here? Talking about how to effectively view the world around you so that you don't get swindled by nonsense. We'll keep it there. It's about how to think critically about the world so that people don't just lie to you and then you just believe it because it appeals to your preconceived notions of what you think the world should be. It was written at the end of Carl Sagan's life, a fascinating and important life. That he lived in science and science communication, and he took a look at the world around him, saw what it was, where it was going, and wrote a book as sort of a last statement of, I'm not going to be around anymore to guide people. I'm not going to be around anymore to point out what's true and what's accurate. So you're going to have to figure it out on your own. And here's how to do it. Here's how I would do it. Here's how I think of things. And it's fascinating. And it is worth reading more and more every year, I think. So that's it. That's my list. 6 recommendations. The Demon Haunted World, The House of Government, Fatal Discord, Wagnerism, The Age of Wonder by Richard Holmes, Lenin's Tomb, and then an honorable mention for Michelangelo, God's Architect. And that's it for me today. I will hopefully be back tomorrow. I hope that if you watched my previous video and you were looking for some recommendations, some of those worked for you. And you're welcome to just keep those in your back pocket for a rainy day when you don't have any more fiction to read. And that's it for me. Thank you, BookTube.